Alright guys, Dragon Ball Daima
Recently,
is
and
not
for no reason at all, I
GT.
asked Mint Mobile's legal team
See, we
if
gotta
big
figure out
wireless
what Daima
companies
is,
are
bro,
allowed to
because
raise
I don't
prices
know-
due to inflation. They
I
said
really
yes.
wanna know
A new
what's the
Dragon Ball
reason
series has
for it.
finally been announced, and with its unveiling, the unthinkable has happened. A tidal wave of disagreement and arguing has cascaded over almost every social imaginable. Some for justifiable reasons, and others, not so much. Which is why over the last week we've decided to trawl through the darkest, slimiest crevices of Twitter, TikTok, and even Facebook. Yes, people still use that, shut up. And through doing so, we've composed a list of the most common concerns expressed to examine their merits. All the while we transform some of the most iconic scenes from Dragon Ball Z and Dragon Ball Super into Daima's new style, and vice versa. I suggested I should start this video off by redrawing the cover art of Volume 1 of Dragon Ball into Daima style. You know, I thought it'd be cute. And Lord, let me tell you, this was way more work than I thought it would be. Drawing that dragon was a freaking Oh, hey, look, I'm complaining too. Maybe Daima does make folks complain more. Ah, well. A lot of negative
It
outcry
does,
has led
because
to the
it
most
doesn't
prevalent
make any
and
sense
surface
them
level
being
criticism
kids.
to be that
What
of
is the concept?
Dragon Ball Daima is effectively just Dragon Ball GT 2.0. And today we're here to tell you that that's just silly.
Look, he better convince me that it is way more different than GT. Because with me, what I'm thinking about, GT 2.0, because now everybody getting turned as a kid. Instead of if it just being Goku. So, he better convince us.
Alright, so this is our character select screen. It's randomized and whoever it lands on has to redraw this image into the style of Dragon Ball Daima. And... oh, it's Trev. And he's redrawing Super Saiyan 4 Goku into Daima's style. Alright, so because this is a video effectively defending Daima's right to exist, there will no doubt be folks out there that will be saying I'm deep-throating the copium pipe way too enthusiastically right now. But in reality, my position isn't that I think Daima is going to be good necessarily. Just that we don't have enough information to make any definitive judgments per se. And the most common criticism everyone thought of when they saw the trailer has to be criticism 1. This is GT 2.0. Yep. I thought it, and don't you dare lie, you thought it too. Everyone's saying it, and it's the #1 most thumbed up comment under the trailer right now. Check it out. Also, nice comment, JBeans981. It's funny, you deserve those 37,000 likes. Also, how about you smash a like button so maybe JBeans acknowledges me? Despite this being the most common complaint I've seen online, and despite me going on the record and criticizing Dragon Ball GT's story extensively, Dragon Ball Daima isn't Dragon Ball GT, unsurprisingly. There are, of course, surface-level similarities, not the least of which being the return of Kid Goku to the fray with the premise of exploring other worlds as the trailer teases. However, to suggest that this is GT 2.0 is exceptionally reductionist and honestly, kind of feels like something my grandmother might have said at Christmas. She'd be all like, here you go, Mark, there's that game you were looking for. And then proceeds to hand me Spider-Man 2 for the PlayStation 2 instead of Spider-Man 2 for the PlayStation 5, like I asked. Both are sequels with Spider-Man in the lead, but very different games with very different stories. And honestly, even outside of that, I think the notion that this is GT2 is silly to begin with. The idea that GT was just simply Kid Goku in space and nothing else completely misses the point of, well, so many things that it fundamentally misunderstands fiction. I mean, is the android's arc of Dragon Ball Z just Terminator 2 2? It is if we foolishly boil down Terminator 2 to simply person travels back in time to stop a cataclysmic future brought on by robots programmed to kill a single person, but there are so many more parts to a given work of fiction than boiling it down to some made-up distillation. The android's arc was influenced by Terminator, but it isn't just rehashing it. It is a wholly new product with loads of its unique elements and concepts. And from the looks of it, Daima is very much shaping up to go the same way. Even from the small teaser trailer we've been shown, there's already a lot of interesting stuff to get excited about, and I'm gonna get to that in just a sec, but for now, here's Trev's finished drawing. Look at it in all its majesty. I don't know how he does it. Next up is... oh, it's me again. And I'm redrawing this pose Goku struck during the Saiyan Saga in the style of Dragon Ball Daima. Criticism 2. Who asked for this? Where's Moro? Now, I totally get wanting a continuation of Super, but I think it's kind of important to step back and remember that the anime has never been an adaptation of Toyotaro's manga. It began as a promo tool for the anime and then veered off in its own direction whenever it fell behind. Just look at the Black Arc or the Tournament of Power. It skips over Resurrection F and Broly. It's not a functional standalone product in its own right, and so while it would be super cool to see its original arcs like Moro and Granola adapted later, I think it makes perfect sense why they've gone with something new. It's what they've always done. Heck, something new is certainly what I want. But what I do take issue with is the first part of that criticism, the "who asked for this" sentiment. In fact, there was a whole video that made the rounds recently on Twitter and TikTok that encapsulated this exact sentiment perfectly.
I have never seen a series be so consistently disappointing, so constantly out of touch with what its fans want, as Dragon Ball.
I'll leave the link to the full TikTok in the description, but basically, the creator of this video is suggesting that, number one, fans know what they want. This might seem like an obviously true and uncontroversial statement, and I'm sure there are instances where this has been the case. But generally, if creators always did what fans wanted, then there would be so much less innovation, so much less creativity, because consumers can only want something that they know already exists. And that might sound confusing, but think of it like this. If you rewound the clock to the turn of the 1900s, you'd find a world where horses were the primary mode of transportation. If you were to ask people then what sort of improvements they'd want to see in transport, they wouldn't say the car because that didn't exist yet. They'd ask for faster horses. Now, I'm not trying to suggest that Dragon Ball Daima is going to do for anime what the car did for transportation. Heck, I'm not even saying that it's going to be necessarily good. I don't know because it isn't out yet. What I am saying is don't be caught asking for faster horses when the possibility of something new is right around the corner. But that wasn't even the worst thing I thought that dude said in that video. But before I get to that, here's the finished piece. And next up to draw is Trev again, and this time he's drawing Super Saiyan Blue Goku in Daima style. So, like I was saying, in that viral TikTok, he points out that other popular fan creations have managed to capture what he thinks all fans want, and even goes on to say, quote, "I'm so thoroughly convinced that Toriyama doesn't understand why Dragon Ball Z is popular. Everyone loves seeing their favorite characters transform and take on new, exciting forms."
No.
As someone who makes content surrounding Dragon Ball online and is exposed to all sorts of points of view, I can admit there's certainly a percentage of Dragon Ball's fan base that's there for the fights and the buff aliens throwing lights at each other. It's certainly a prominent element of the show, there's no denying that, but to suggest that's what everyone likes is a little misguided. But my biggest issue with this quote from this, quote, fan, is that it implies that Toriyama doesn't know what Dragon Ball is. So let me be 100% clear here. Toriyama knows exactly what Dragon Ball is and always has. We've seen outstanding fan animations like Legend, A Dragon Ball Tale, Deliverance, or popular fan mangas like Dragon Ball Multiverse, and while there might be an audience for that sort of story, they are importantly not Dragon Ball. And I'm saying that as someone who supported the Patreon of Legend. The guy who led that project is an incredible creator and should be proud, but he'd never say he knows Dragon Ball better than Akira Toriyama. These creations put a real emphasis on action spectacle, and while Dragon Ball is absolutely beloved for its fights, it's not the sole reason I think the majority of us love this series. We love its world, its characters, and the stories surrounding them that give these iconic fights the emotional gravitas that has stuck with us all these years. The way Toriyama weaves comedy, drama, and breathtaking action is spectacular, and we've seen through his work outside of Dragon Ball that he's still more than capable of producing incredible adventures.
Okay, let me pause real quick. I can honestly say that with me, the reason why I like Dragon Ball Z because I grew up with it. And it just was like, I don't know, because I am one of probably the 1% that had liked GT as well. I had loved GT. The GT intro was so dope when you get up in it. Well, bro, like, I had loved GT too. But I think with me was like when Super came out, And then, if I remember correctly, the last thing was Vegeta end up having a baby, having a girl. So I wanted the story to start from there and then go back to when Android 16 or 17, I think it's 16, had wished to bring all the universes that got destroyed back, so that bringing up more things. But then from there we went to another Broly movie when we had like 3 other Broly movies back then. I don't know why we bring Broly back. It was like, so it's like almost, man, I don't know, bro. It's almost, you know what? Dragon Ball Z is Marvel.
Your vibes. And that's important. But first, let's
always do stuff backwards and doing other stuff, bro. Never keep the thing straight line. You go do a full movie, then you go do a backstory about this person, you do a backstory about this person, and then you do a backstory about this person, and then you go to this movie, then you do like
Let's move on to the next drawing. Trev absolutely killed this Super Saiyan Blue Goku in the Daima style. And next up to draw is... it's AJ, and he will be transforming this close-up from the trailer of Kid Goku into an adult version in the style of Daima's character designer, Katsuyoshi Nakatsuru.
It's a brand new exclusive event with all your favorite South Park characters. There's
And yes, for those wondering, the meme is not dead. AJ is still drawing these with a mouse, even though he has a drawing tablet with a stylus 3 feet from him. Bully this man. So, on the topic of adventure and Dragon Ball, it brings me to criticism number 3. This chibi Dragon Ball is gonna be for babies. Now, I feel like this will be a rebuttal that will fall on deaf ears, but here it goes anyway. You're entitled to not like the aesthetic for your own individual reasons. I can't dispute how you feel.
I have no issue
But just
with it.
because a new Dragon Ball series is led by juvenile characters doesn't mean the series will be bereft of serious or action-packed moments. I mean, like, are we really going to sit here and act like classic Dragon Ball doesn't exist? Dragon Ball was filled with kids and yet played host to some of the most savage, tragic, emotional, and action-packed moments in the series. One of the main inspirations behind Dragon Ball Daima will be that of RPGs, and therefore will carry with it a lot of progression elements. Transformations are cool, and giant universal clashes have certainly become part of modern Dragon Ball's image, but I think there's a problem with that. There's not really much room left to explore when that's the scope of your fare. The scope of the battles became so huge that they almost became parodies of themselves in Super. How long have we spent hearing time and again outcries from the Dragon Ball fandom that they want to return to more grounded, martial arts-based strategic combat and choreography rather than just random transformations and beam struggles? And here we are, finally getting that! Not to harp on this for too long, but have you seen Dragon Ball? That show was filled with some of the most fun, show-stoppingly creative action in the history of the franchise. Goku blasted a Kamehameha out of his feet. The final double knockout kick between Goku and Jackie Chun in the finals of the Tenkaichi Budokai is one of the sickest things in the history of existence. We really are getting a lot of what we wanted here in terms of grounded action, and I feel like that is worthy of praise rather than outrage. And with that, it brings us to the end of AJ's redraw. I think he really managed to capture the designer of this series and aged up Goku accurately. Next up is... it's Trev again. Man, Trev really is carrying this video so far, isn't he? But hey, I'm not complaining. He's going to be redrawing this image of Goku with his Nyoibo or Power Pole staff into the style of adult Goku from Dragon Ball GT. And while he does so, I'll be discussing criticism number 4. Dragon Ball but babies? What is this, Coco Melon? This is probably the common complaint that I think is the most purposely misrepresentative of the bunch. Over and over now, I've seen people post about Daima as if everyone has been shrunk down to babies. And every single time they show the shot of Goten and Trunks as babies. But like, did we watch the same teaser trailer? They are the only babies of the bunch, obviously because they're younger than everyone before the Wish. Literally everyone else has been transformed not to babies, to kids. With that said, however, I do find it funny that for years we've been waiting for Goten and Trunks to finally be physically aged up to look more mature, and just as they do it, Toriyama makes them younger than we've ever seen them. Well, except for Trunks, we've actually seen Baby Trunks before. Shout out to the Cell Saga. And again, I don't want to disparage anyone's personal preference. It is totally fine to prefer fights of adult Goku and co. over those in original Dragon Ball. But what we are getting with Daima is clearly not Dragon Ball Rugrats Edition. It is a show that, for the series' 40th anniversary, harkens back intentionally to the days of the original Dragon Ball. The days of Mercenary Tao Pai Pai and Ten Shinhan and Demon King Piccolo. Days of the Nyoibo and the Nimbus Cloud and everything in the early world that truly felt, well, magic. All with a modern host of extremely talented animators desperate to bring this celebration to life. And while the production's anime clearly looks fantastic, something that has gotten some flack here and there has been criticism number 5. Toriyama aged Goku up because he was easier to draw in fights. Now the fights are going to be bad because kids are harder to draw in fights. Granted, this is a much more niche criticism, but I have seen it out there. And to be clear, there is some truth to this too. But like most of these criticisms, I think it's missing a crucial point. It's true that during Dragon Ball's early serialization, Akira Toriyama expressed that Kid Goku's stubby proportions were a limiting factor when it came to the action sequences, and so when the 23rd Tenkaichi Budokai rolled around, he did what was very uncommon at the time, by fundamentally changing the aesthetic of his main character. In the case of Goku, it was to age him into an adult, thus granting him longer limbs which he could more easily draw dynamic poses with. However, this does not mean that Daima will suffer the same limiting factors as early Dragon Ball did, simply because Dragon Ball Daima isn't drawn in the style of classic Toriyama, but instead his modern style. You'll notice that in Super, or even Toriyama's own drawings for the characters over the last 10 plus years, there's been a consistent push towards a more slender style of physical form. This entirely remedies the issues he encountered in early Dragon Ball. No more stubby limbs, now we have slender, more easily pronounceable limbs. And what's more is, because these designs are very refined, they end up translating into animation really well, as you've no doubt seen in the trailer, and as we will no doubt see when the series is ultimately released. But before we move on, let's take a look at this redraw. Trev totally crushed this one and did a fantastically faithful job in the process. Next up on the drawing block is it's yours truly, and I'll be redrawing this image of Goku powering up his Super Saiyan God form from Dragon Ball Super into Daima's art style with Kid Goku.
Watch 100 plus channels of live TV, your favorite sports, movies, and more with no.
All the while I tackle criticism number 6. The action won't be as good, it's gonna be a slice of life. I miss Z-era raw action and animation. This show isn't going to be a slice of life story. Slice of life, for those that don't know, would be the sort of misadventures Goku and Piccolo might get up to when looking after Pan for the day. They are low stakes and a slice of everyday life. And you know what? Super had that exact episode. This is to say, Dragon Ball is normally a mix between much lighter fare and more intense battles. You need to have the light to make the darker moments, well, shine prominently. Having a series with just action and intense serious moments creates a very one-note and boring atmosphere. To paraphrase Syndrome from The Incredibles, if everything is intense, then nothing is. The story will likely present a combination of humorous light material mixed with action and dramatic moments. Like Dragon Ball Z, like Dragon Ball Super, and like Dragon Ball Super Broly did. And I'm certain the art style will reflect this. In the same way action animators like Yuya Takahashi were tasked with the action sequences in the Broly film, so too will they be offered the chance to work on the action of Daima and present it in the best way possible. Again, at the end of the day, this is a story written by Akira Toriyama for the 40th anniversary of the series. One that intentionally harkens back to the golden age of Dragon Ball. The name might have been a placeholder in the past, but to me, it's clear that there's a concerted effort to try to reignite that magic which catapulted Dragon Ball into the mainstream. One that didn't rely on transformations or flashy energy blasts. One designed thoughtfully around adventure, combat, and a love for comedy. But yeah, that's my Daima Goku as a Super Saiyan God. Next up is Trev again, and he's redrawing this shot of Shin, Kibito, and Goku into the style of Dragon Ball Super. And that's appropriate because this series will not have the same problems Dragon Ball Super made headlines all over the world with. It has been made very clear internally that Toei does not want to repeat the sins of Dragon Ball Super's past, and as a result, the animation and overall production will have tremendous polish. In addition to gaining an all-star cast of impressive animators, Daima 2 has shed some of the baggage that impeded Super's production. Gone are the rigid and overly shiny designs that plagued Dragon Ball Super. Gone are the horribly saturated colors and lack of art direction. Everything has been revamped for this series, and it shows in the trailer alone. Stacks of atmosphere, great animation, great color work. It's awesome. Furthermore, unlike any other show in Dragon Ball's history, this series isn't being produced like your average TV series. It's not beginning with only a few episodes finished and adhering to a strict schedule thereafter. Instead, this is being given a production timeline akin to a movie with 2 years of the animation phase taking place before it even starts airing. This, in tandem with the impressive team behind it, as well as Akira Toriyama's intimate involvement, will no doubt yield an addition to the franchise that, if nothing else, will be stunning and distinctly Dragon Ball. Personally, I cannot wait to see it because, I don't know about you, but this image, despite being well crafted and faithful to Super's aesthetic, it is not a look I want to return to if we can help it. While Trev is closing us off and redrawing this Kid Goku falling from the lookout as an adult, I'd like to bring this video full circle and touch on the growing misunderstanding that Daima is simply GT 2.0 once again. I want to touch on this by highlighting why I think GT was so widely disliked. And it wasn't because Goku was a kid going on adventures. Classic Dragon Ball did all of that and is widely considered one of the best stretches of the series. In my view, GT was lacking because the stories which made up the first arc were largely uninteresting, and more than that, it felt as though the team behind the series itself didn't fully believe in or have a solid vision for the story they wanted to tell. And this is reflected in other areas of the story too. Bringing back 17 wasn't a great decision and ultimately felt vapid. The Shadow Dragons were a cool concept, but the execution was exceptionally uninspired and boring. From an art standpoint, compared to the rest of the series, on average, the storyboards for the action felt extremely lacking, and outside of the main theme, which slapped, and still slaps, the score for this series just wasn't it. Hell, the whole Adventures in Space with Goku business really barely lasted the first arc of GT. The concept of a grand adventure that could expand on lore and introduce new characters is actually friggin' awesome, and to discredit Daima based on something so superficial seems exceptionally crude and, well, reductive. Dragon Ball Daima could be just as dull and repetitive as Dragon Ball GT, but, and this is genuinely important, the series, unlike GT, has immense Toriyama involvement beyond anything we've seen before. His involvement with Daima doesn't end with designs like it did for Dragon Ball GT. He's writing the entire story, start to finish. He's even involving himself in looking at boards and animation, something he's never really done before. Meaning the words and the actions of everything we will see will have that Toriyama touch more than GT, more than Dragon Ball Super, and even more than Dragon Ball Super Broly. Will it be good? I honestly cannot say. But I'm certainly not going to write it off until I see it for myself. There's too much promise here for me to do something like that, and ultimately, that's what I hope this video makes clear to you too. It may not be what you personally wanted. Heck, I certainly didn't think this was the direction they were going to go. But the little information we do have so far paints a picture of something that, at the very least, should be an exciting endeavor to give a fair shot to next year. Thanks for watching.
Totally not Mark. Okay, look. Hey, I ain't gonna lie to you, bro. I give it up to you. You convinced me. But I for one, did not write it off. I did write it off, but he convinced me to, like, hey, man, guys, it's not GT 2.0. We got to give this thing a chance because 40 years, you got to think about this man, 40 years, this is what this man knows. This is what he does. This is what he draws. So he's sitting there reminiscing like back in the day, he ain't really had to do all the stuff he had to do now. So back in the day, man, it was easy. So he just want to revisit, do something new. But, hey, they say a whole new series, a whole new story. So guys, man, hey, I'm gonna give it a shot. But this wasn't a bad video. I like this.